Hello, friends. If you want to watch super hit movie Terminator Dark Fate in English, then you must like this video. If you are visiting our channel for the first time, don't forget to subscribe to our channel, friends. In today's video, the movie we are going to talk about is called Terminator. Dark Fate, we will talk about what this movie is and where you can watch it, all the interesting facts about this movie in today's video. I'm going to tell you. I'm also going to give you all the information on which OTT platform or on which satellite channel you will get to watch this movie also. We will talk in detail about the technical department, music department, pre-production, filming, post-production, budget, box office, collection of this film. We will also talk about the story of this film, and I will also give you a small review of the story of this film, apart from this. We will discuss about the facts of this film's storyline, star cast actors' performance in the film, and which character has played which role. That's why I request you friends to watch this video till the end, so let's start the video. Terminator Dark Fate is a 2019 American science fiction action film which serves as the sixth installment in the Terminator franchise and as a direct sequel to both the Terminator 1984 and Terminator 2 Judgment Day 1991, ignoring the events depicted in T3 Rise of the Machines 2003, Terminator Salvation 2009, and Terminator Genisys 2015. The film stars Linda Hamilton and Arnold Schwarzenegger reprising their characters Sarah Connor and the T-800 Terminator respectively, and introduces Mackenzie Davis, Natalia Reyes, Gabriel Luna, and Diego Boneta as new characters. Dark Fate is directed by Tim Miller and written by David S. Goyer, Justin Rhodes, and Billy Ray, based on a story by James Cameron, Charles H. Eglee, Josh Friedman, Goyer, and Rhodes. The film is set 25 years after the events of Terminator 2, when the machines send an advanced Terminator, Luna, back in time to 2020 with instructions to kill Danny Reyes, whose fate is connected to the future. The Resistance also sends Grace Davis, an augmented soldier, back in time to defend Danny, who is also joined by Sarah Connor and Skynet's T-800. Principal photography took place from June to November 2018 in Hungary, Spain, and the United States. Distributed by Paramount Pictures in North America and Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures in other territories, the film was released theatrically in the United States on November 1, 2019. Terminator Dark Fate received mixed reviews from critics, being considered an improvement over recent predecessors. However, the film grossed $261.1 million worldwide and lost $122.6 million, making it one of the biggest box office bombs of all time. Plot. In 1998, 3 years after destroying Cyberdyne Systems, Sarah and John Connor have retired to Livingston, Guatemala. They are suddenly ambushed by a T-800 Terminator, one of several sent back through time by Skynet, which kills John despite Sarah's attempts to stop it. In 2020, an advanced Terminator, the Rev-9, is sent back in time to Mexico City to murder Danny Ramos, while cybernetically enhanced soldier Grace is sent from 2042 to protect her. The Rev-9, disguised as Danny's father, infiltrates the automobile assembly plant where she and her brother Diego work, but is thwarted by Grace, who escapes with the siblings. The Rev-9, using its ability to split into its cybernetic endoskeleton and shape-shifting liquid metal exterior, pursues the trio, killing Diego and cornering Grace and Danny. However, Sarah arrives and temporarily disables both forms of the entity using military-grade weaponry. Grace and Danny steal Sarah's car to escape, but due to her enhanced cybernetic capabilities, Grace needs medicine or else she falls unconscious. Raiding a pharmacy, they get the medicine they need before Sarah catches up and guides them to a motel. At the motel, Sarah reveals that she found them because in the years since John's death, she has received encrypted messages detailing the locations of arriving Terminators, each ending with "for John," allowing her to destroy them before they become threats. Grace notes that Skynet and John do not exist in her future, meaning Sarah succeeded in destroying the former after Cyberdyne went defunct. However, humanity's future is threatened by another AI called Legion, originally developed for cyber warfare, which was built in Skynet's place. When Legion became a threat to humans, an attempt was made to neutralize it with nuclear weapons, resulting in a nuclear holocaust and the AI creating a global network of machines to terminate the human survivors, who organized a resistance movement to counter Legion's onslaughts, and Donnie's destiny is linked to their war against it. Grace traces the source of Sarah's messages to Laredo, Texas. Barely evading the Rev 9 and the authorities while crossing the Mexico-United States border, they arrive at their source, where they discover the same T-800 that had killed John. Having fulfilled his mission and with Skynet no longer existing to give him further orders, the T-800 was left aimless. Over time and through his adaptability, he became self-aware, learned from humanity, and developed a conscience, taking the name Carl and adopting a human family. After learning how his actions affected Sarah and being able to detect the location of temporal displacements, Carl began to forewarn her of them to give her a purpose to make amends. Carl joins them against the Rev 9 and they prepare to destroy it, with Sarah begrudgingly agreeing to work together for Danny's sake. Anticipating the Rev 9's arrival, Carl bids his family farewell and tells them to escape. The group seek out a military-grade electromagnetic pulse, EMP generator from Air Force officer and acquaintance of Sarah's, Major Dean. The Rev 9 catches up with them, forcing them to steal a plane to escape, though the EMP generators are destroyed in the resulting shootout. During the flight, Grace reveals Danny will become the future founding commander of the Resistance before the Rev 9 boards their airplane and temporarily subdues Carl, forcing the three women to parachute from the plane into a river near a hydroelectric plant, with Carl and the Rev 9 following close behind. Trapped, the group makes their stand inside the plant. In the ensuing battle, Carl and Grace force the Rev 9 into a spinning turbine, causing an explosion that critically damages the two Terminators. The severely damaged Rev 9 endoskeleton incapacitates Sarah, forcing Danny to confront it herself. A dying Grace tells Danny to use her power source to destroy it. Danny tries to fight the Rev 9 but is quickly overpowered. Carl reactivates himself and restrains it, allowing Danny to stab it with Grace's power source. He then drags himself and the Rev 9 over a ledge before the power core explodes, destroying them both. Sometime later, Danny and Sarah watch a young Grace at a playground with her family, the former determined to avert Grace's death and Legion's rise before driving off to prepare. Cast. See also List of Terminator characters. Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, the mother of John Connor, the former future leader of the human resistance in the war against Skynet. Now a battle-hardened senior woman and left alone after John's death, Sarah hunts and kills Skynet's remaining Terminators to prevent Judgment Day and forestall the coming conflict. After learning of Danny's destiny leading a new resistance against the rogue AI Legion and realizes her own purpose in the new timeline, she prepares Danny as she did John. Maddie Curley serves as a stunt actress and body double for a young Sarah Connor, with CGI applied to recreate Hamilton's facial likeness from the 1990s opening scene. Jessie Fisher serves as a stunt actress and body double for present-day Sarah Connor. Arnold Schwarzenegger as the T-800 Carl, an aging Terminator built by Skynet and one of several sent back in time to kill John. After completing its mission, it gained autonomy and integrated into human society, becoming benign and later starting an emotional relationship with a woman while raising her son. It lives in Laredo, Texas, and owns a drapery business. It later joins forces with Sarah and Grace to help protect Danny from the Rev 9, although Sarah continues to hate Carl for John's death. Dark Fate marks the first film in the series where Schwarzenegger appears as the titular character, but does not receive top billing. Brett Azar serves as a body double for the young T-800, with CGI applied to recreate Schwarzenegger's facial likeness from the 1990s opening scene. Azar reprises this role from Terminator Genisys. Mackenzie Davis as Grace, an enhanced super soldier from 2042 who was previously taken in by Danny as a teenager. Grace was subsequently trained and raised by Danny. Grace is later part of a security detail for Danny, and she sustained stab wounds while fighting off a Rev 7 Terminator. Following the attack, she volunteers to be converted into a cyborg. Augmented with robotics, she has abilities comparable to those of a Terminator for short periods of time and requires medication, nourishment, and rest to replenish her strength. Her enhanced senses and abilities allow her to detect machines such as legions before normal humans. Grace is sent to protect Danny's younger self from Legion's Rev 9. Stephanie Gill portrays a 10-year-old Grace. Natalia Reyes as Danny Ramos, a young woman who works with her brother at an automobile assembly plant in Mexico City. Danny is being targeted for termination by the Rev 9. At first, Sarah believes that Danny is the resistance leader's destined mother, like Sarah. However, it is revealed that Danny is fated to take on a role akin to that of Sarah's deceased son as the Resistance's founding commander in the war against the machines of Legion, with Sarah as her mentor. In the future, Danny sends Grace back in time to stop the Rev 9, and she instructs Grace to seek the T-800 for aid by tattooing its location's coordinates on her. Gabriel Luna as Gabriel Rev 9, an advanced Terminator that originated from Legion and was sent back in time to terminate Danny. Featuring a traditional solid endoskeleton covered with liquid metal, the Rev 9 possesses the ability to separate these two components into two separate, fully autonomous units. Diego Boneta as Diego Ramos, Danny's brother. Tristan Ulloa as Felipe Gandal, Danny's uncle and a border coyote. Alicia Borrachero as Alicia, Carl's wife. Manuel Pacific as Mateo, Carl's stepson. Enrique Arce as Vicente, Danny's and Diego's father. Fraser James as Major Dean, a United States Air Force intelligence officer and Sarah's acquaintance. Tom Hopper as William Hardell, Grace's commanding officer in the Resistance. Stuart McQuarrie as Craig, Danny and Diego's work supervisor. Stephen Cree as Rigby, a United States Border Patrol agent. Georgia Simon, the film's ADR voice casting director, provided the voice of Grace's mother. Edward Furlong as John Connor reference, a young version of John Connor created using CGI and motion capture. Aaron Kunitz provided the voice of young John Connor. Jude Colley served as a body double for young John Connor, onto which Furlong's facial likeness from the 1990s was applied. Earl Bowen appears as Dr. Silberman via uncredited archival footage from Terminator 2: Judgment Day. Production. Development. By December 2013, Skydance Productions was planning for Terminator Genisys to be the start of a new trilogy of films. The Genisys sequels were scheduled for release on May 19, 2017 and June 29, 2018. For the second film in the planned trilogy, actor Arnold Schwarzenegger was to reprise his role as the T-800. Terminator Genisys was produced by Skydance founder David Ellison and was released in 2015, but its disappointing box office performance stalled the development of the planned trilogy. Dana Goldberg, the chief creative officer for Skydance, said in October 2015 that she wouldn't say the franchise is on hold so much as readjusting. According to Goldberg, despite Genisys' disappointing domestic performance, the company was happy with its worldwide numbers and still intended to make new films. Production of a sequel would begin no earlier than 2016 because the company planned market research to determine its direction after Genisys. The Genisys sequels were ultimately canceled. Tim Miller and Ellison talked about Miller eventually directing a new Terminator film after completing Deadpool 2, 2018. When Miller left the Deadpool 2 project in October 2016, he took on the Terminator film as his next project instead. At the request of Miller, franchise creator James Cameron subsequently joined the project. Cameron had directed and co-written the first two Terminator films, and Miller, through his company Blur Studio, had previously worked with Cameron. Ellison felt that Genisys could have been better, so he recruited Cameron as a fellow producer in hopes of creating a better film. Cameron was intrigued by Ellison's proposal to make a sequel to Terminator 2: Judgment Day, 1991, ignoring the events of Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, 2003, Terminator Salvation, 2009, and Terminator Genisys. Cameron said, "We're pretending the other films were a bad dream, or an alternate timeline, which is permissible in our multiverse." Other filmmakers on the project had suggested making the film without Schwarzenegger, but Cameron disliked the idea as he and Schwarzenegger were friends. Cameron agreed to produce the film on the condition that Schwarzenegger be involved. As producer, Cameron was involved in pre-production and script work and also provided his input on the project. Miller felt that audiences had lost hope in the franchise following the last three films. He believed that Cameron's involvement would serve as a seal of quality, which would convince fans that the franchise was going to be handled at least in a way that the original filmmaker would want. Cameron was involved with the film as of January 2017, and Ellison was searching for a writer among science fiction authors with the intention that Miller direct. Later in the month, Ellison said there would be an announcement regarding the future of the franchise before the end of the year, adding that it was going to be in a direction that would provide the continuation of what the fans really wanted since T2. In July 2017, Cameron said that he was working with Ellison to set up a trilogy of films and supervise them. The intention was for Schwarzenegger to be involved, but also to introduce new characters and pass the baton. Pre-production. On September 12, 2017, Skydance Media confirmed that Miller would direct the new Terminator film, which was initially scheduled for release on July 26, 2019. The film's budget was approximately $196 million, split roughly three ways between Skydance, Paramount Pictures, and 20th Century Fox, all of which were production companies for the film. Chinese company Tencent Pictures joined the project as a co-financier in April 2018, ultimately financing 10% of the budget. Tencent was a production company on the project and also handled the film's distribution, marketing, and merchandising in China. TSG Entertainment and Cameron's Lightstorm Entertainment were also involved in the production. Writing. Before screenwriters were hired, Miller had asked that a group of novelists be consulted on how to reinvent the franchise. Among the novelists were Joe Abercrombie, Neil Asher, Greg Bear, Warren Ellis, and Neil Stephenson. Abercrombie suggested the idea of a female character who is half human and half machine, forming the origins of the character Grace. A human-machine character, Marcus Wright, was previously featured in Terminator Salvation, portrayed by Sam Worthington. The film's story was conceived by Miller, Cameron, and Ellison, and a team of writers was hired to write the script. They included Charles H. Eglee, David S. Goyer and his writing partner Justin Rhodes, and Josh Friedman, creator of the television series Terminator, the Sarah Connor Chronicles. Cameron and the writers watched the Terminator sequels that came after his initial films. They determined that the storylines of the later films were too complex when it came to time travel. Weeks were spent working on the story, which was eventually envisioned as a new Terminator film trilogy. Goyer wrote a draft for the first film in the trilogy that would ultimately become Terminator Dark Fate. Goyer moved on to other projects. By November 2017, Billy Ray was brought in to polish the script. Ray rewrote much of Goyer's draft. Miller wrote the film's action scenes, while Ray handled the characters. Cameron had a list of action scenes for no particular film that he had wanted to shoot over the years. He gave this list to Miller so he could work them into Terminator Dark Fate. The list formed the basis for scenes involving a dam and a Humvee underwater. As the start of filming approached, Cameron felt that the script needed improvement and made the changes himself. The film's story credits were given to James Cameron, Charles Eglee, Josh Friedman, David Goyer, and Justin Rhodes. Screenplay by David Goyer, Justin Rhodes, and Billy Ray. Cameron said that he and Miller ultimately had many disagreements about the film, but he described it as being part of the creative process. Among their disagreements was whether the human resistance would be winning or losing to Legion in the future. Miller wanted the humans to be losing, while Cameron felt differently. Miller said, "Legion is so powerful, the only way to beat it is going back in time and strangle it in the crib." Jim says, "What's dramatic about the humans losing?" And I say, well, what's dramatic about the humans winning, and they just need to keep on winning? I like a last stand. It's not his thing. Miller also had disagreements with Ellison. Miller said that the destruction of Cyberdyne at the end of Terminator 2 Judgment Day is an event which would change the future, but no one knew how. And I don't think the movies that came after it really explored that in a clean way, like I believe we are, with true consequences. And it makes perfect sense for Sarah to be the one to face those consequences, since they were her choices to begin with. One consequence would be the death of John Connor, who was initially meant to become the future leader of the human resistance against machines. The decision to kill the John Connor character came from Cameron, who wanted to surprise audiences who had become invested in the character's mythology. It's like, let's just get that right off the table. Let's just pull the carpet out from underneath all of our assumptions of what a Terminator movie is going to be about. Let's just put a bullet in his head at a pizzeria in the first 45 seconds. Cameron said that John's death serves as a springboard for the story to show Sarah's ultimate trauma, from which she only begins to recover right at the end of the new film. She's driven by hatred, by revenge. Her badassery comes from a place of deep hurt and deep pain. Miller said that he and the other filmmakers did not find the decision to kill John controversial. Miller felt that Sarah Connor was best portrayed as an unhappy character, and he said that John's death provided a reason for her to be that way. Miller said of Sarah Connor, "Grief has made her want to be an emotionless killing machine. And at the end of the movie, she's allowing herself to care again. She comes back to humanity. Her shriveled heart has blossomed again." That was the journey. However, Miller did not want Sarah Connor to be an unpleasant and unwatchable character and said, "I think Sarah is tough, but it's not uncomfortable to watch." Cameron believed that removing John Connor would prevent the film from feeling like a retread of previous films. Discarding John Connor allowed for new characters to be worked into the story. Miller said, "You can't have John be a 36-year-old accountant somewhere." And really, when you think about it, he could be sort of a pathetic figure as a man who had missed his moment in history and was relegated to this banal, ordinary existence. Describing the opening scene, Miller said, "You want to slap the audience in the face and say, 'Wake up. This is going to be different.' I feel like that accomplished that. I hate the violence of it. I hate the idea of a kid being shot, but the dramatic fuel that it gives the story is kind of undeniable." In the early stages of development, there was consideration given to the idea that Dani Ramos could be portrayed as John's daughter, or that she could have some other connection to the Connors. However, Miller disliked the idea that she would be related to them. There were never plans to feature John Connor in any other scenes besides the opening. Linda Hamilton was somewhat shocked by the decision to kill John Connor, which she believed would upset a lot of fans. But she also said she wanted the film series and its characters to evolve. She was pleased with the film's characters, feeling that earlier sequels to Terminator 2 lacked characters the audience would care about. Miller was dissatisfied with the final film's idea that Dani would send Grace to the past, saying, "We set up this whole story where Grace is kind of Dani's surrogate child, and a mother sending her child to die for her is just... Yeah, I had a different scene in mind." Additionally, several endings were considered, including one where Sarah and Dani would bury Grace, and another where Grace's body would be burned and sent down a river. Eventually, Miller suggested the idea that Dani would go to see the younger Grace. The ending playground scene was a late addition to the film. Cameron devised the idea of a T-800 Terminator that is just out there in this kind of limbo for more than 20 years after carrying out an order, becoming more human, in the sense that he's evaluating the moral consequences of things that he did, that he was ordered to do back in his early days, and really kind of developing a consciousness and a conscience. Cameron considered this iteration of the character to be more interesting than those featured in his first two films, saying, "We've seen the Terminator that was programmed to be bad. You've seen the one that was programmed to be good, to be a protector. But in both cases, neither one of them have free will." Schwarzenegger enjoys interior decorating, so Cameron suggested that his T-800 character in the film have a drapery business. Miller arranged the script structure to have Schwarzenegger's character appear later in the story, to allow time for the three female lead characters to develop. By April 2017, Schwarzenegger had joined the project to reprise his role. That September, it was announced Hamilton would reprise her role as Sarah Connor, whom she previously portrayed in the first two films. Hamilton had also briefly reprised the role for the 1996 theme park attraction T2 3D, Battle Across Time, and provided her voice in an uncredited role for Terminator Salvation. Because previous Terminator films did not do well with audiences, Miller felt it was necessary to have Hamilton reprise the role. Cameron, Ellison, and Miller only wanted to bring back the Sarah Connor character if Hamilton would reprise the role. The film's storyline was devised first so the trio would have an idea to pitch to Hamilton. Cameron said that he sent Hamilton a long, rambling email with a lot of reasons why she should do it and a lot of reasons why she shouldn't. Cameron's main reason why Hamilton should return was that people liked her in the role. There was never a version of the film that excluded Hamilton, and Miller said there was no backup plan in the event that she declined the role. After approximately 6 weeks, Hamilton chose to sign on to the film, which did not yet have a completed script for her to read. That was still being refined. Initially, Hamilton was unsure if she wanted to reprise the role. She had been semi-retired from acting and said, "I didn't want it to look like a shameless money grab. I am living this quiet, lovely life that doesn't involve being a celebrity, and you really have to think, do I really want to trade that in again for another 15 minutes? Because so much time had passed since her last appearance as Sarah Connor, Hamilton had assumed that she would never reprise the role, and she was surprised by the offer to do so. Of her decision to return, Hamilton said, "I was very pleased that all of the years had passed, because I could fill the years up with so much backstory and inner life that could power the character." Hamilton spent more than a year working with a fitness trainer to get into physical shape for the role. Hamilton said she put 10 times more effort into her physique than she did for Terminator 2. This included a regimen of supplements and bioidentical hormones, as well as training with Green Berets. She also took weapons training. Commenting on Hamilton's role, Cameron said he liked the idea of an action film starring a 62-year-old actress. Hamilton chose to dye her hair gray for the film, as she wanted viewers to see her character as an old woman. Hamilton disliked the physical training, and she had suggested that her character be portrayed as a fat person so she would not have to train for the film, although the idea was rejected. In March 2018, it was announced that Mackenzie Davis had been cast in the film. Miller said of Davis, "I didn't just want a woman who could physically fit the role, but emotionally as well. Mackenzie really wanted to do it. She came after the role. She worked harder than anybody." After Davis was cast, she undertook physical training for the film's fight scenes. Schwarzenegger and Gabriel Luna also underwent physical training for the film. Luna was first considered for a role in December 2017 when a 4-month casting process began for him. The production team wanted to cast an 18 to 20-year-old woman as the new centerpiece of the story. Hamilton rehearsed lines with several actresses who were auditioning for the role of Danny, and she immediately felt that Natalia Reyes was the right choice. When Reyes sent in an audition tape, all she knew about the project was that it was a big American movie. She soon had a meeting with Miller through Skype before coming to Los Angeles to audition with Hamilton. For her next audition, Reyes was flown to Dublin to audition with Davis, who was there shooting another film. The casting process lasted a month and a half for Reyes before she was finally cast. Afterwards, she went through physical training to prepare for the role. Because the film is partially set in Mexico City, the cast includes several Latino actors, including Reyes, Luna, and Diego Boneta, who were cast as primary characters in April 2018. Reyes said, "This movie is a reflection of Hollywood now. We are just changing these stereotypes and the ideas and the cliches of what a Latino should be." Cameron watched all the audition tapes and gave his approval to the casting choices. By June 2018, Jude Colley had been cast as the double for a young John Connor, with Brett Azar reprising his role from Genesis as the body double for a younger T-800. Cameron announced in July 2019 that Edward Furlong would reprise his role as John Connor from Terminator 2 Judgment Day. Furlong later maintained that his role in the film was small, and Miller regretted that Cameron had made such an announcement. Furlong's likeness was used to recreate his younger face digitally using CGI. He also gave a performance through facial motion capture footage to de-age him that was added into the film. For his performance, Furlong simultaneously watched footage of Collie during the film's opening scene and had to match his own performance with Collie's precisely. Furlong is credited as John Connor reference. Furlong was disappointed by his small role, which was limited to 1 day of work. Filming. Production was intended to start initially in March 2018, but was delayed due to casting. It was then expected to start during May and end during November, with filming taking place in Hungary, the United Kingdom, Spain, and Mexico. In April 2018, the film's release date was delayed until November 2019. Filming began in Spain on June 4, 2018, under the working title Terminator 6 Phoenix. Filming subsequently moved to Hungary and the United States before concluding in November 2018. The film, like Cameron's initial Terminator films, is rated R, whereas the previous two films were rated PG-13. Miller said the film is rated R because the fans kind of demanded it in a way, saying that the DNA of Terminator is an R-rated movie and that to not do it R feels disingenuous to the source material. Initially, certain scenes were filmed in two ways, with and without R-rated violence and language. This gave the filmmakers an alternative in the event that the film's intended R rating should be reconsidered. The filmmakers eventually abandoned this method after deciding definitively on an R-rated film. During filming, Cameron made further changes to the script to perfect the characters. In some cases, his script changes were submitted to Miller only a day prior to filming the scene. Hamilton rejected certain actions and lines of dialogue that she felt were uncharacteristic for Sarah Connor. Schwarzenegger also added and changed some of his own lines during filming. Cameron did not visit the set as he was busy filming his Avatar sequels. He also did not want to interfere with Miller's directorial work. Spain. The first day of filming took place in Isleta del Moro, Almería, Spain. It involved the pivotal opening scene featuring the characters of the T-800, Sarah Connor, and John Connor. The three characters were portrayed in the scene by body doubles, and digital de-aging was later applied to give them a youthful appearance. The doubles wore special hoods that tracked their head movements, allowing their facial features to be replaced later by new motion capture facial footage recorded by Schwarzenegger, Hamilton, and Furlong. During filming of the opening scene, Hamilton expressed dissatisfaction with the body double's portrayal, feeling that it did not accurately reflect the character. Hamilton advised the body double on how to portray the character for a more fierce response to the T-800 character. Hamilton was disappointed that she had no on-screen part in the scene and later said, "It wasn't me, and it really hurt. I cried my eyes out when I got home." The film used more stunt women for Sarah Connor than Terminator 2. Hamilton said she really got a little crazy trying to micromanage them to ensure that they moved the way her character should. For this reason, Hamilton performed some of her own stunts. Scenes that were set in Mexico were shot entirely in Spain, where filming lasted approximately 30 days. Spain was chosen for budgetary reasons and because of safety concerns over drug cartel violence in Mexico. Filming locations included the Madrid neighborhoods of Pueblo Nuevo and Lavapiés, which stood in as Mexican towns. For these scenes, the film crew repainted cars to resemble taxis and also left old vehicles on the streets to suggest they were abandoned. An artist was also hired to paint graffiti art to further give the location a Mexican appearance. Bonetta, who was born and raised in Mexico City, was asked to meet with the film's art department leaders to ensure that the filming locations in Spain had an authentic Mexican look. While filming in Spain, Luna coached several actors on how to speak Spanish with a Mexican accent. In July 2018, filming took place for 2 weeks in Catral, including the San Juan Industrial Estate. Filming also took place in Cartagena and at the Aldea Davila Dam. A combination of practical effects and CGI were used for a highway chase sequence in which the Rev 9 pursues Grace, Donnie, and Diego. Sarah Connor's present-day introduction also takes place on the highway, and Hamilton rehearsed the scene extensively before it was filmed. Approximately 7 freeway locations in Spain had been considered before settling on the final choice, consisting of new roads leading to the then unopened Región de Murcia International Airport. The highway chase sequence required a crew of approximately 300 people, with many different film departments involved. A custom-built pod car, similar to a dune buggy, was built to haul a pickup truck during filming. This allowed Davis, Reyes, and Bonetta to act out their scenes in the truck, while the driving was handled by a professional driver in the pod car. Cameras were attached to the pickup truck to film the actors while the vehicle was in motion. One shot filmed at the San Juan Industrial Estate depicts the Rev 9 driving its plow truck through a wall, which was built specifically for the shot. The highway chase was initially planned to be twice as long. The Rev 9 was to have killed a cop and stolen a motorcycle to continue its pursuit, and the motorcycle would be shot at and destroyed. The Rev 9 would subsequently leap onto a truck and then onto Danny's vehicle. The extended sequence was pre-visualized, but Miller chose not to film it as the sequence was considered crazy enough already. Previously, Miller had wanted to film the motorcycle sequence for his 2016 film Deadpool. Hungary and U.S. Filming moved to Hungary on July 19, 2018. Filming locations there included Origo Film Studios in Budapest. Part of the film's C-5 plane sequence involves the characters floating in the fuselage in zero gravity. Miller spoke with pilots to do research into gravity and the plane's action scenes, which were difficult to choreograph because of the constant gravity changes depicted. Hamilton said the film's script was the first one that she did not fully understand because of the large amount of action. Animated pre-visualization aided the cast during such scenes. In Budapest, special effects supervisor Neil Corbould created the film's largest set piece, the fuselage of the C-5. The set was constructed on an 85-ton gimbal, the largest ever built. The set was capable of rotating 360 degrees and could tilt backwards and forwards at 10 degrees. It was powered by 5 200-liter-per-minute hydraulic pumps, as well as more than 1.5 miles of hydraulic hoses. A pit had to be dug in the concrete floor of the soundstage to accommodate the large set, which took approximately 5 months to design and another 5 months to build. The set was 60 feet long, half the length of a real C-5 fuselage, and it contained a blue screen at one end for post-production effects to be added in later. The rotating set helped to achieve the sense of gravity needed for the scene, and the set also allowed the camera crew members to strap themselves inside. The plane set was padded for actors who shot scenes inside it. Foam replicas of military vehicles were also situated inside the plane with the actors. Davis said shooting the film was the hardest thing she had ever done because of the physical requirements. One scene depicts a Humvee falling out of the C-5 plane, with Grace having to open the vehicle's parachutes to land it safely. Davis was suspended with wires to perform the scene, which was filmed in Budapest. An underwater action scene took weeks to shoot and involved immersing Hamilton and Reyes in a water tank. The scene depicts Sarah and Danny inside the Humvee after it falls over the dam and into water. The scene was shot in a tank surrounded by a large blue screen stage which depicted the exterior environment. For the scene, each day of shooting took place over 12-hour periods from the evening to the morning. Another scene depicts the T-800 and Rev 9 fighting underwater. The film includes a scene where the characters are held in a detention center on the Mexico-United States border. Miller said it was not meant as a social commentary or political statement on immigrant issues related to the border, stating that the scene was just a natural evolution of the story. He noted, "I tried to walk a line there because it's a terrible situation, but I didn't want to vilify border guards. They're people doing a job. The system is the problem. And even the choice to do it really wasn't a statement. It really was a function of us putting the stories beginning in central Mexico and then traveling." Miller was emotional while filming the scene because of its depiction of immigrants being held in a detention center. Luna said, "We don't make any overt political stances. We just show you what's happening in the world, and you receive it however as you may." Scenes at the detention center were filmed in July 2018 at an old Nokia factory in the Hungarian city of Komárom. In late July 2018, Schwarzenegger began filming scenes in Budapest. In September 2018, filming took place at a Mercedes-Benz factory in Kecskemét. Filming in the United States was scheduled to begin in mid-October. Carl's cabin was built from scratch. While the filmmakers liked the surrounding scenery, they rejected a previous house that was built on the property for another production, so it was torn down to construct the new home. Schwarzenegger completed filming on October 28, 2018. Filming wrapped in early November 2018. Post-production. Cameron, who also works as a film editor, was heavily involved in the editing of Terminator Dark Fate. He saw a rough cut of the film in early 2019 and provided Miller with notes on how to improve it, feeling it needed to be perfected. He said the film transformed quite a bit from the rough cut. The initial cut of the film, known as an assembly cut, was 2 hours and 50 minutes. Miller's director's cut was closer to the film's final runtime. 3 or 4 minutes were removed from the director's cut, including a few scenes. Some scenes were also trimmed, including the underwater fight and those on board the C-5 airplane. In his director's cut, Miller said he removed a lot of stuff that Cameron thought was important. Miller also said that he and Cameron had many disagreements about lines of dialogue which Miller thought were poetic and beautiful, while Cameron thought they were unimportant. Because of the lack of full control throughout the project, Miller said he would likely not work with Cameron again, although the two maintained a good relationship. The final cut of the film runs for 128 minutes. At one point late in production, Miller considered placing the opening scene later in the film when Sarah is in the motel room explaining John's death to Grace and Danny. However, Miller said this structure really changed a whole lot of stuff in a negative way, and he ultimately decided to keep it as an opening scene in order to start the film off by shocking the audience. The opening scene was originally longer as it featured dialogue between Sarah and John. This was cut from the final film as Cameron and Miller believed that the visual effects did not hold up well when the characters spoke. Another deleted scene went into more detail on how Carl knew about other Terminators arriving from the future. The scene, written by Cameron, explained that Carl created a cell phone app to track the arrivals, which disrupt cell phone signals. The scene was removed because it was considered too humorous compared to the rest of the sequence, which has a serious tone as it involves Sarah meeting her son's killer. A shot was deleted from Carl's final fight with the Rev 9 that depicted it ripping flesh off of Carl's arm. Miller said, "We had to walk the line between gross and horrific," and he described the arm skin as hanging like a big piece of jerky, saying, "That's where we drew the line." The film contains 2,600 visual effects shots and was edited using Adobe Premiere Pro and Adobe After Effects. The visual effects were provided by Industrial Light and Magic, ILM, and Scanline VFX, supervised by Alex Wang, David Seeger, Arek Komorowski. Eric Barba was the production supervisor with help from Blur Studio, Digital Domain, Method Studios, Unit Image, Rebellion VFX, Mammal Studios, Universal Production Partners, UP, Weta Digital, 148, Les Androids Associés, The Third Floor, Inkter, and Cantina Creative. ILM was initially going to be the sole company working on visual effects, but others were brought on due to the amount of work that had to be done on the film. The Third Floor handled some of the pre-visualization Method Studios created visual effects for scenes involving the C-5 airplane and a helicopter crash. The company also created an establishing shot of a military base and several shots set during the border crossing. Blur Studio handled scenes that depict Grace's future as a soldier. ILM handled the de-aging in the opening scene. ILM's visual effects supervisor, Jeff White, said a lot of work went into the scene to ensure that the characters' faces looked realistic and had the same likenesses as Terminator 2. After seeing the digital headshots, Schwarzenegger provided guidance to the ILM team, which made subtle adjustments to perfect his character's facial movements. The ILM team also created the liquid metal effects of the Rev 9. The team studied time-lapse photography, which depicted the growth of algae and fungus, and this inspired the liquid metal movements. According to Cameron, in February 2019, the film's working title was Terminator Dark Fate. This was confirmed as the film's official title the following month. Music: main article, Terminator Dark Fate soundtrack. Tom Holkenborg composed the film's score, reuniting with director Tim Miller after their collaboration in Deadpool. Holkenborg recreated Brad Fiedel's original Terminator theme while also introducing Latino elements to reflect the ethnicity of Danny Ramos. He used approximately 15 instruments while composing the score and also used the sound of an anvil and the banging of a washing machine, describing his score as being way more aggressive than Fiedel's. The soundtrack was released digitally on November 1, 2019 by Paramount Music. Release: marketing. A first-look promotional image showing Hamilton, Davis, and Reyes was released in August 2018. It was the subject of comments which criticized the absence of the Terminator and John Connor and received backlash for its focus on the female cast members. A teaser trailer for the film was released on May 23, 2019, that features a cover version of Björk's Hunter, performed by John Mark McMillan. The film's theatrical and international trailers were released on August 29, 2019. The trailer's release date marked the anniversary of the original Judgment Day date given in the second film. Initially, the marketing campaign highlighted the return of Cameron and Hamilton. In the final months, the campaign focused more on the film's action and special effects. Promotional partners included Adobe Inc. and Ruffles. In September 2019, Adobe and Paramount Pictures launched a contest for people to create their own remix version of the trailer using Adobe software and assets from the film. In early October 2019, brief footage of the film was shown during IMAX screenings of Joker. Miller and the cast went on a global press tour to promote the film, and Hamilton attended a premiere event in Seoul on October 21, 2019. In the film, Schwarzenegger's character has a van which advertises Carl's Draperies 888-512-1984 on the side of it. The number was an actual phone number which, when dialed, plays a recording of Schwarzenegger as Carl. The number references May 12, 1984, the date that Kyle Reese time travels to in the first film. Theatrical. Terminator Dark Fate was released in the UK on October 23, 2019, and was released on November 1, 2019, by Paramount Pictures in North America and Walt Disney Studios Motion Pictures through 20th Century Fox internationally. On October 19, 2019, Alamo Drafthouse Cinema hosted surprise screenings of the film in 15 theaters, disguised as screenings of Terminator 2: Judgment Day. The film's premiere event in the U.S. was to be held on October 28, 2019, at TCL Chinese Theater in Hollywood, Los Angeles, but it was canceled because of nearby wildfires. Home media. Terminator Dark Fate was released digitally on January 14, 2020, before its home video releases on 4K Ultra HD, Blu-ray, and DVD on January 28. Several deleted scenes were included with the home video release, including one in which Sarah learns that Carl has informed Alicia of his past and his true nature as a killing machine. In another scene, Sarah hijacks a man's vehicle on the highway after Grace and Danny steal hers. Another scene depicts the characters being attacked by guards as they journey towards the border. One deleted scene depicts Grace volunteering herself to an older Danny to send her to the past. On December 15, 2024, the film was released on Netflix. Reception. Box office. Terminator Dark Fate grossed $62.3 million in the United States and Canada and $198 million in other territories, for a worldwide total of $261.1 million. With a production budget between $185 to $196 million and an additional $80–100 million spent on marketing and distribution, early estimates stated the film needed to earn over $450 million worldwide to break even. The film ended up losing Paramount, Skydance, and other studios $122.6 million. It was labeled a box office bomb after its dismal opening weekend, and it finished as the second biggest bomb of 2019. As a result of the losses, sources close to Skydance said shortly after the release that there were no plans to continue the franchise. In the United States and Canada, Dark Fate was released at the same time as Harriet, Arctic Dogs, and Motherless Brooklyn, and was initially projected to gross $47 million from 4,086 theaters in its opening weekend. The film made $2.35 million from Thursday night previews, on a par with the $2.3 million that Genesis made from its Tuesday night previews in 2015. But after making just $10.6 million on its first day, weekend estimates were lowered to $27 million. It went on to debut to $29 million. Although it finished first at the box office, it was the lowest opening in the series since the original film, when accounting for inflation, which was blamed on the lukewarm critical reception, as well as the audience's disinterest in another Terminator film. The film made $10.8 million in its second weekend, dropping 63% and finishing fifth, and then $4.3 million in its third weekend, falling to 11th. In Germany, the film started out with 132,500 viewers, placing it third on that week's charts, 190. In the weekend following its international debut, the film grossed $12.8 million from countries in Europe and Asia, considered a low start. The film was projected to gross $125 million globally during the first weekend of November 2019. Instead, it only made $101.9 million, 18% below projections, including $72.9 million overseas. As it did in the U.S., the film underperformed in China, where it opened to just $28.2 million, far below the $40-50 million estimates. Critical response. On the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 70% of 351 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6.210. The website's consensus reads, Terminator Dark Fate represents a significant upgrade over its immediate predecessors, even if it lacks the thrilling firepower of the franchise's best installments. Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned the film a score of 54 out of 100, based on 51 critics, indicating mixed or average reviews. Audiences polled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale, the same score as its three immediate predecessors, while those at PostTrack gave it an overall positive score of 78%, with 51% saying they would definitely recommend it. The Hollywood Reporter wrote that critics overall seemed cautiously excited about Dark Fate, although there's a certain awkwardness about seeing repeated recommendations that it is easily the third best movie in the series. William Bibbiani of The Wrap wrote that, whether Terminator Dark Fate is the last chapter in this story or the first in an all-new franchise is, for now, irrelevant. The film works either way, bringing the tale of the first two films to a satisfying conclusion while reintroducing the classic storyline in exciting new ways to an excited new audience. It's a breathtaking blockbuster and a welcome return to form. Variety's Owen Gleiberman called the film the first vital Terminator sequel since Terminator 2, and wrote that Terminator Dark Fate is a movie designed to impress you with its scale and visual effects, but it's also a film that returns in good and gratifying ways to the smartly packaged, low-down genre thriller classicism that gave the original Terminator its kick. Joe Morgenstern of the Wall Street Journal gave the film a negative review, describing it as cobbled together by dunces in a last-ditch effort to wring revenue from a moribund concept. The plot makes no sense. Time travel as multiverse data. Worse still, it renders meaningless the struggles that gave the first two films of the franchise an epic dimension. Jeffrey M. Anderson of Common Sense Media gave the movie 2 out of 5 stars. This sixth Terminator movie erases the events of the previous three, dud sequels, but winds up feeling half erased itself. It's like a dull, pale, irrelevant carbon copy of a once glorious hit. Christy Lemire of RogerEbert.com gave Dark Fate 2 out of 4 stars, arguing that it suffered from empty fan service and that Hamilton deserves better, as does her supporting female cast. David Ehrlich of IndieWire praised Hamilton's performance and the movie's digital recreations of her, Furlong's and Schwarzenegger's younger likenesses, but concluded that this painfully generic action movie proves that the Terminator franchise is obsolete. Tasha Robinson of The Verge stated that some combat sequences are staged clearly and cleanly, while others are packed with CGI blurs and muddy action and are hard to follow in even the most basic who's where and are they dead kind of way. And when Dark Fate does deign to explain what's going on, It delivers its exposition in a self-important, hushed, clumsy way, as if audiences should be astonished by the most basic plot revelations. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian awarded it 2 stars out of 5, stating, "The Terminator franchise has come clanking robotically into view once again with its 6th film. It absolutely will not stop, not merely repeating itself, but somehow repeating the repetitions." While he wrote that it was good to see Hamilton getting a robust role, he added that, sadly, she has to concede badass superiority to Davis. He concluded by writing, "This 6th Terminator surely has to be the last. Yet the very nature of the Terminator story means that going round and round in existential circles comes with the territory." Richard Roper of the Chicago Sun-Times awarded the film 2 stars out of 4, calling it a boring retread and so derivative of Judgment Day, although he welcomed the return of Linda Hamilton, praised an impressively effective Mackenzie Davis, and the winning screen presence of Natalia Reyes. Angie Hahn of Mashable found the film underwhelming and its title to be quite apt. Dark Fate is too thinly sketched to be anything but pastiche. It feels like a Terminator movie spit out by a machine designed to make Terminator movies. A dark fate for the franchise, indeed. Regarding the film's mixed reception, Tim Miller believed that some audiences were predisposed to dislike the film after being disappointed by the last 3 films, adding that some audiences hate it because it's the 6th movie, and Hollywood should be making original movies and not repeating franchises. Miller later gave a more blunt assessment in 2022. "Terminator's an interesting movie to explore, but maybe we've explored it enough. I went in with the rock-hard nerd belief that if I made a good movie that I wanted to see, it would do well. And I was wrong. It was one of those fucking eureka moments in a bad way because the movie tanked." James Cameron reflected on Dark Fate in 2022. "I'm actually reasonably happy with the film. I think the problem, and I'm going to wear this one, is that I refused to do it without Arnold. And then Tim wanted Linda. I think what happened is I think the movie could have survived having Linda in it. I think it could have survived having Arnold in it. But when you put Linda and Arnold in it, and then, she's 60-something, he's 70-something, all of a sudden it wasn't your Terminator movie. It wasn't even your dad's Terminator movie. It was your granddad's Terminator movie. And we didn't see that. It was just our own myopia. We kind of got a little high on our own supply. And I think that's the lesson there." Schwarzenegger also gave a blunt assessment in a 2023 interview about the franchise. "The first 3 movies were great. Number 4, Salvation, I was not in because I was governor. Then 5, Genesis, and 6, Dark Fate, didn't close the deal as far as I'm concerned. We knew that ahead of time because they were just not well written." Fate of John Connor. The death of John Connor early in the film was criticized by both critics and fans, 209. Fred Hawson of news.abscbn.com wrote that, "Deciding to lose John Connor early on in this one made the emotional heart of the first 2 classic Terminator films stop beating as well." Richard Roper argued that killing John Connor ruined what the previous 2 films established. Even though Dark Fate tosses aside the 3rd, 4th, and 5th entries in the series, like a Terminator disposing of a hapless cop, it also undercuts the impact of the first film and the follow-up, which is one of the 2 or 3 greatest sequels of all time. First, they get rid of the John Connor character in almost casual fashion. Corey Plant of Inverse, who was critical of Furlong's portrayal of the character in Terminator 2, nonetheless found his character's death off-putting. The character at the focus of every previous Terminator movie, the same young boy I irrationally hated since I was a young boy myself, was dead. Needless to say, it rattled me. He also found that replacing him with new heroes undermined the Connor's importance established in the previous films. The future that made Sarah Connor important died with John, and now there's a new Terminator story with a new set of heroes that makes it seem like no matter how many times Skynet or its next iteration sends a murder robot back in time to kill someone, there will always be a new hero waiting to rise up. Robert Yannis Jr. of Cheat Sheet described the twist as unthinkable. In an instant, the entire crux of the franchise, the human resistance led by John, is torn away. Matt Goldberg of Collider felt the opening did irreparable damage to the legacy of Terminator 2 by rendering it pointless. Every sequel since has diminished the ending of Judgment Day because the story needs to continue, because studios like money and can't leave well enough alone. But Terminator Dark Fate may be the worst offender thus far, as its prologue directly follows T2 and goes for shock value rather than considering what it means to continue the narrative. 1. Richard Trenholm of CNET felt the opening twist summed up everything wrong with Dark Fate. The joy of seeing the de-aged characters instantly becomes cringeworthy, as this prologue undermines Terminator 2 by killing a major character in such a cursory fashion it just feels silly. Ian Sandwell of Digital Spy suggested that the twist was not particularly important, given that in the other films, John Connor only exists to motivate the other characters and sets the plot in motion, and that John's role as a future leader had already been rendered moot through the elimination of Skynet. About the controversial scene, Furlong also expressed his displeasure and hoped to reprise the role in full in a future film. Linda Hamilton also voiced her opinion that the scene would upset fans, as she considered John to be the true main protagonist of the franchise. Nick Stahl, who portrayed John in Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, also expressed interest in reprising the role in a possible seventh film. Cathal Gunning of Screen Rant noted the similarity between the decision to kill off John Connor in the opening scene to the deaths of Newt and Corporal Dwayne Hicks in Alien 3, which was criticized by Cameron, who had directed the preceding film, Aliens. Accolade: Terminator Dark Fate received a nomination for Outstanding Special Practical Effects in a photoreal or animated project at the 18th Visual Effects Society Awards. At the 2020 Dragon Awards, the film received a nomination for Best Science Fiction or Fantasy Movie. It was nominated in 2 categories at the 2021 Golden Trailer Awards: Talk Create Advertising Group for Best Action and Nonstop Aspect Ratio for Best Home Ent Action. Terminator Dark Fate received 3 Saturn Award nominations for Best Science Fiction Film, Best Supporting Actress for Hamilton, and Best Special Effects in 2021. Video games. The 2019 video game Gears 5 allows the player to play as either Sarah Connor, with Hamilton voicing her character, Grace, or a T-800 Terminator model. The game was released on September 6, 2019. The T-800 model was later a downloadable playable character in Mortal Kombat 11 using Schwarzenegger's likeness, but without the actor voicing the character. He was voiced by Chris Cox instead of Schwarzenegger. The downloadable content was released on October 8, 2019. A mobile game titled Terminator Dark Fate: The Game was released in October 2019. The PC game Terminator Dark Fate: Defiance, developed by Slitherine Software in collaboration with Skydance, was released on February 21, 2024. It is a real-time tactics game that takes place 10 years after the Judgment Day, during the war between humans and Legion. The player assumes the role of Lieutenant Alex Church, a commander of the Founders, a group consisting of ex-U.S. military personnel. A multiplayer mode features 2 other playable factions: Movement, a human resistance organization, and Legion. The game received mixed or average reviews according to Metacritic, with a score of 72 out of 100. Alex Avard of Empire found the quality of Terminator games to be inconsistent, but wrote that Dark Fate: Defiance, with its tightly designed gameplay, may have just helped to raise that historically low bar a little bit higher. John Bolding of IGN criticized the game's difficulty. Toys. National Entertainment Collectibles Association released action figures based on the film, and Chronicle Collectibles released an 18-inch T-800 statue. Canceled sequels. Plans for a new Terminator film trilogy were announced in July 2017. While working on the story for Terminator Dark Fate that year, Cameron and the writers envisioned the film as the first in the new trilogy. They also worked out the basic storylines for each planned film. In October 2019, Cameron said that sequels to Terminator Dark Fate would further explore the relationship between humans and artificial intelligence, while stating that a resolution between the 2 feuding sides would be the ultimate outcome. That month, Schwarzenegger said that Cameron would write the Terminator Dark Fate sequels and that Cameron would begin work on the next film in early 2020 for release in 2022. Although the events of Terminator Dark Fate erased Schwarzenegger's T-800 character from existence, Cameron did not rule out the possibility of Schwarzenegger reprising the character, saying, "Look, if we make a ton of money with this film, Dark Fate, and the cards say that they like Arnold, I think Arnold can come back. I'm a writer. I can think of scenarios. We don't have a plan for that right now. Let me put it that way." Hamilton said in October 2019 that she would probably reprise her role for a sequel, although she joked that she would fake her own death to avoid appearing in it, saying that making Terminator Dark Fate really was hard because of the physical training she had to undergo. In April 2024, Hamilton confirmed that she was done with the role. Following the film's performance at the box office, sources close to Skydance told The Hollywood Reporter that there are no plans for further films. In June 2020, star Mackenzie Davis expressed, "I really loved the movie and I'm so proud of what we did, but there wasn't a demand for it at the box office, and to think that there'd be a demand for a seventh film is quite insane. You should just pay attention to what audiences want." Later in December, Davis went on to reveal that the seventh film would not have been a sequel to Dark Fate, but a spin-off focusing on an alternate timeline version of Grace set in the future war, similar to Terminator Salvation, and would not have featured Schwarzenegger. Reboot. Further information, Terminator. It was later reported in May 2023 that Cameron was developing a script for a Terminator reboot. In a franchise that's all about traveling to the past and tinkering with the timeline to prevent future tragedies from occurring, it makes perfect sense that the latest Terminator movie would engage in some revisionist history of its own. Terminator Dark Fate exists in a world, and in a world, to borrow from the late great trailer narrator Don LaFontaine, where the previous 3 films in the series never even existed. Director Tim Miller, working from a script by David S. Goyer and Justin Rhodes and Billy Ray, picks up where the high-tech game-changer Terminator 2 Judgment Day left off in 1991. It's as if we never had to slog through Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines 2003, Terminator Salvation 2009, and Terminator Genesis 2015. If only we could get that time back too. This is an inspired idea, one born of ingenuity as well as pure survival instincts. This was an action franchise of mythological proportions that was steadily dying. It's enough to make you wish the filmmakers had explored this approach for more than relentless action and empty fan service. Dark Fate recycles images, visual effects, and even dialogue from the previous movies, including lines that have been uttered so many times in so many other pop culture contexts that they now elicit groans within the confines of an actual Terminator setting. Sure, it's great to see Linda Hamilton back, swaggering and kicking ass in the defining role of her career as Sarah Connor. But now she's the one who gets to say, "I'll be back." It's hilarious. As well as some other painfully clunky lines like, "I hunt Terminators, and I drink till I black out." Hamilton deserves better. So do the other strong women who make up the film's trio of warriors, fighting to protect each other and all of humanity from technological destruction. Again. This time in a present day where the machines haven't taken over yet, a woman drops from the sky in a glowing blue orb, naked but otherwise ready for her mission. Her name is Grace, a formidable Mackenzie Davis. She's an augmented human soldier from the future, and she's arrived in Mexico City to keep a seemingly ordinary young woman from being killed. Danny Ramos, Natalia Reyes, is an upbeat auto factory worker whose mundane life gets turned upside down, sometimes literally, when an unstoppable machine of death comes after her. He is the Rev 9, a suitably stoic Gabriel Luna, the latest Terminator model, with all the ferocious fighting skills and morphing abilities of the T-1000 and then some. He can take a shotgun blast to the head and heal to perfection within seconds. He turn his arms into spears, sledgehammers, guns, whatever weapons he needs with a mere flick of the wrist. He can get obliterated in a blast, his limbs scattered hither and yon, only to have them melt into gooey black puddles that scurry across the floor to recreate his shape once more. He's like the Blob, only super evil. He even has a skeleton that separates from his exterior, so he can fly a helicopter in the sky and battle puny humans on the ground simultaneously. Cool ideas all, and exciting improvements on the digital wizardry that dazzled us nearly 3 decades ago. The visual effects are consistently the strongest part of Dark Fate, but they're in the service of a blockbuster that is relentless in its one-note intensity. Miller, who achieved a far more pleasing balance of action and comedy with the first Deadpool movie, functions here at a single, frenetic speed for 2 solid hours, and it is exhausting. The first, big fight scene between Grace and the Rev 9 is full of inventive, acrobatic choreography, and Miller and Oscar-nominated editor Julian Clark were wise to let big sections of choreography play out. But eventually, the fact that the Rev 9 just keeps coming, over and over again, without the slightest trace of weakness or vulnerability, grows repetitive and tedious. Even when Sarah Connor shows up out of nowhere in the midst of a lengthy, heart-pounding car chase to blow stuff up and then walk away without looking at it, she heightens the sense of anxiety, despite the arsenal in her truck and her detached, been-there-done-that demeanor. Hamilton looks fierce as ever, but she's stuck explaining things to her fellow female cohorts through inane expository dialogue that's both haranguing and blasé. Sarah was Danny once. She understands the young woman's confusion over her sudden sense of importance, as well as the paranoia that fuels the group's every move. Then, just when it seems so refreshing to have not one, but a group of strong women at the center of an extreme and extremely violent action picture, part of a behemoth franchise about preventing the apocalypse, along comes Arnold Schwarzenegger to save the day. Because you couldn't reboot the franchise without the original Terminator, theoretically. He said he'd be back, after all. But while it's hugely amusing to discover where he's been and what he's been doing all this time, his banter with Sarah Connor is less than snappy. And it is sort of depressing in the end to find the film putting these badass ladies in the position of needing rescue from a man, even if he is an android, when they were doing just fine on their own. Thank you very much, review. So in Terminator's beginning is his end, and in his time travel action franchise is the ending that brings him back round to another beginning. Basically replaying the famous elements from T1 and T2 with some new actors, new twists, newish attitudes to sexual politics, famous lines slightly changed, "Come with me or you'll be dead in 30 seconds," and with Arnie himself good-humoredly assuming a wise old-timer attitude like a cyborg Grandpa Walton. The Terminator franchise has come clanking robotically into view once again with its 6th film. It absolutely will not stop, not merely repeating itself, but somehow repeating the repetitions. Terminator Dark Fate is co-produced by its original creator James Cameron, who has also co-written the story. It's that type of late-period action movie we have seen with Sly Stallone's Rocky and Rambo properties, a kind of end-stopped reboot, which gives the series a new lick of paint, younger cast members, a sprinkling of up-to-the-minute social touches, while also conveying a solemn finality, as if graciously acknowledging its own classic status, though certainly keeping the door open for more films. So much has happened since Cameron's sci-fi action classic from 1984 made a mainstream icon and star of Arnold Schwarzenegger. The 1991 sequel, Terminator 2: Judgment Day, although in my view lacking the steely clarity and force of the original, was dynamically filmed and a huge smash. Then we had a tiresome run of rusty turkeys on a laborious Back to the Future theme. Terminator 3: Rise of the Machines, 2003, Terminator Salvation, 2009, without Arnie, and the irritatingly spelt Terminator Genesis, 2015. In the course of all this, Schwarzenegger found time for a brief tenure as governor of California, and Christian Bale, playing freedom fighter John Connor in Terminator Salvation, became notorious for an on-set rage-filled meltdown, tape-recorded and uploaded to the web. But now we are in Mexico, close to the Texas border, almost 3 decades on from the second Terminator, where smart young auto worker Dani Ramos, Natalia Reyes, finds herself being menaced by a terrifying humanoid robotic figure who descends naked to Earth in a crackle of lightning in the time-honored manner. Gabriel Luna has the stern but featureless T2-ish role of the Terminator who disappointingly isn't Arnie. But then another figure comes down to Earth stark naked and is apparently on Danny's side. This is Grace, Mackenzie Davis, a female equivalent of the gallant Kyle Reese from the first film. Then the legendary figure of Sarah Connor herself, played by Linda Hamilton, appears with some heavy weaponry, also intent on saving young Danny. And she is not the only one who is to be on her side. It won't be long before the great Austrian-American appears, the Terminator ancestor, now living incognito like someone in a witness protection program and pretending to be a curtain fitter called Carl. It's a pretty droll appearance for the great man. So you don't need an M.A. in Terminatorology studies to figure out that this Danny is someone destined to be of enormous importance to the humans' resistance uprising against their future oppression by the Skynet tyranny. But wait, wasn't that supposed to have been forestalled by Sarah Connor's heroic efforts? Yeah, but then there was a new oppression from some machines called Legion. Oh. Basically, Arnold is called upon to reprise a character I always thought was fundamentally wrong. The nice Terminator. The Terminator on the side of the angels, although Hamilton's Sarah Connor has some fierce dialogue scenes with him, unconvinced that he can be anything other than evil. It's good to see Hamilton getting a robust role, although sadly, she has to concede badass superiority to Davis. This sixth Terminator surely has to be the last. Yet the very nature of the Terminator story means that going round and round in existential circles comes with the territory. Like any self-respecting film nerd, I love Terminator 1984 and Terminator 2 Judgment Day 1991. It's pretty much accepted by pop culture that T2 is one of the greatest movies ever made, but it was T1 that inspired me to pursue a career in film. From seeing Arnie's Terminator punch a bloody hole in a street punk through to Sarah Connor crushing the nightmarish machine in a steel press, I was absolutely glued to the screen. There was something electric about its hardcore, no-nonsense approach. T2 is an amazing sequel which definitely added narrative weight to the story, but it did set an unhealthy precedent for the following sequels to add more tiresome world-building. The latest installment in the franchise, Terminator Dark Fate, promises a back-to-basics approach, which it almost pulls off. Directed by Tim Miller from Deadpool 2016, with a story by original creator James Cameron, the action picks up not long after the events of T2. With the help of impressive computer-generated de-aging, we are reintroduced to Linda Hamilton as original series heroine, Sarah Connor. Despite having stopped the Judgment Day apocalypse, Terminators are mysteriously still lurking around, with one in particular causing a major tragedy for Sarah. It was a compelling start, which got me hooked, but I expect a portion of the fan base will be mad about it. You'll know it when you see it. Before we have time to process the shocking opening, we cut to the year 2020. We are introduced to Mackenzie Davis as Grace, a mechanically augmented human soldier sent back in time to protect Natalie Reyes's Danny from Gabriel Luna's new and improved Terminator model, the Rev 9. With no time wasted, director Tim Miller does an amazing job bringing us back to what made the original such a fun ride. We have the Protector, the Target, and the Assassin all established with amazing efficiency, followed by a heart-pumping chase sequence which effectively brings the franchise back to its roots of bone-crunching thrills. It's almost as if someone at Fox remembered that the original series is R-rated and that there's no point watering it down for a PG-13 audience. I wonder if that's the main reason Tim Miller was brought on to direct, seeing as how he'd just had major success with his R-rated Deadpool film. Between Deadpool and Terminator Dark Fate, he sure does love his freeway fights. Miller takes us back to the raw, bloody thrills the series was originally known for. It is certainly a big plus and makes the film worth a watch for a Terminator fan. After those first 30 minutes, I was on board for the ride. I'm sorry to say that my engagement stopped dead as soon as Sarah Connor re-entered the action. Don't get me wrong, I couldn't be happier that Linda Hamilton came back to the role. She clearly still has what it takes to be a badass action star, but her inclusion in terms of script and structure does halt the momentum of the overall film. For what seems like an eternity, every principal character stops to exposit pages of world-building dialogue, repeatedly explaining the new version of Terminator, the new version Skynet, the new future war, the new future Messiah, and how all of this connects to the old versions. The script even finds time to re-explain the original movies, just in case there's someone in the audience who has never seen or heard of Terminator. Miller manages to exposit all this lore far more gracefully than Terminator Genisys 2015, but it's sad to see a film which began with so much potential just fall back into old habits that ruined the franchise in the first place. It really could have just taken Terminator 3 Rise of the Machines 2003 approach at explaining how it connects to the first two and just move on. It really doesn't make much of a difference besides a third act reveal, which isn't surprising or necessary as a reveal. It could have just taken T3's approach with that too. Again, you'll know it when you see it. Don't mess with Linda Hamilton as Sarah Connor, really hoping she comes back to play more action heroines in different movies. Even with the script never capitalizing on what it set up, the final film isn't without worthwhile qualities. Mackenzie Davis as Grace continues to show her talent, having already shown in the Black Mirror episode San Junipero, 2016, and in Blade Runner 2049, 2017. For a young generation of science fiction lovers, Davis is sure to be their go-to heroine. Coming off her success in Birds of Passage 2018, Natalie Reyes as Dani does stand out as a suitably likable lead. No easy task when comparisons will surely be made to Edward Furlong as John Connor and, of course, Linda Hamilton as Sarah. Miller and company have really gone out of their way to ensure that Dani is not just a copy of those earlier leads. The script handles her characterization in a way that will definitely be troublesome for some fans, and it arguably doesn't completely work in the way the filmmakers want it to, but it is an admirable effort. Gabriel Luna as the Rev 9 probably comes off the worst out of the cast. A great actor to be sure who can definitely hold his own against the other players, yet his unimaginative Terminator powers and the cringeworthy dialogue he's given doesn't help. A terrible shame considering we have seen him effectively play a superpowered badass as Ghost Rider in Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. 2016. Natalie Reyes as Dani. She takes the news that she's the target of a time-traveling murder robot rather well. Regardless of the new characters, the biggest question is, how does Arnie's T-800 work its way into the story? It's not a spoiler to say that a Terminator movie features Arnie, but for the sake of respecting actual spoilers, the less said about that, how they do it, the better. It has to be seen to be believed. Not to say it isn't enjoyable. In fact, it is highly enjoyable and side-splittingly funny, even though it makes little to no sense. Despite this, or because of it, I found myself loving every second of it and even wanted the explanation to be fleshed out further. Just be warned that I fear the fan base will tear the explanation to shreds. Once again, you'll know it when you see it. Considering how many times this franchise has tried and failed to recapture its glory days, it's fair to say that Terminator Dark Fate is a decent enough attempt. Giving the reins to a distinct directing voice and a game cast is certainly the right move on the studio's part. The problem that holds the film back is that there's still nowhere to go after T2. By continuing the franchise's frustrating world-building history, Terminator Dark Fate sadly doesn't keep its promise of being an exciting fresh start. Plot: Sarah Connor and a hybrid cyborg human must protect a young girl from a newly modified liquid Terminator from the future. Review. It's no secret that Terminator 2 is one of my favorite movies of all time, if not my absolute favorite. Despite having some entertaining moments, every sequel since has failed to capture the magic of the first two Terminators, and the trailers for the latest movie, which is the real Terminator 3, didn't exactly blow me away, but the return of both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton guaranteed my interest. Reviews have generally been positive, stating that Dark Fate is indeed the sequel we've been waiting for, and I'm pleased to say that they are correct. Dark Fate is packed with R-rated action from start to finish and moves along at a frantic pace but still gives the characters time to develop, and I found myself rooting for them all. Mackenzie Davis plays Grace, a half-human robot hybrid who is much the same as Marcus from Salvation. Davis is incredibly sympathetic and is immediately appealing, so we are never in any doubt that she is a complete hero. Then we have Natalia Reyes, who plays the new target of the Terminator Danny, and her transformation throughout the movie from scared girl to warrior woman doesn't quite reach the depths of Linda Hamilton's arc in the first two movies, but she is still a great character we can get behind. But what of the greatest female badass of all time? Well, this is Linda Hamilton's movie, and it's wonderful to finally see her again in her most iconic role as Sarah Connor. She's every bit as tough and barely sane as she was in T2, and brings the fire and personality to the movie. She has the best dialogue, and her scenes with Arnold are pure gold. Arnold sadly doesn't appear until over an hour into it, but he still gets plenty to do, including having several throwdowns with the new Terminator, played by Diego Luna. I'm not sure how I feel about the whole Carl thing, and as Sarah says, I'm not gonna fucking call you Carl. And I have to agree. The scenes with him talking about drapes were meant to bring some levity, but I hated them. And it's hard to believe this is the same Terminator model that we were scared of in the first movie. It's only brief, though, and thankfully the tone generally is spot on, feeling mostly serious with a few moments of humor much like T2. Even from the trailers, I could tell Diego Luna wasn't remotely threatening as the evil Rev 9 Terminator. I'm not sure why I didn't buy him, but it may have just been the subpar special effects, so this new model Terminator wasn't really any different from the T-1000. Oh, he can split in two. Who gives a shit? I just wish there had been a little more innovation on that front. The visuals are at least better than they looked in the trailer, but why is the CG not as good as it was in the second movie? It looked a little too video game-ish, and during some of the action, it lacked the weight to be convincing. I hate scenes in movies which are meant to be set in the real world where people, or Terminators in this case, defy gravity and move unnaturally, as it just takes me out of the scene. I found the visuals in the second half vastly improved, though, and the finale looked great and had a thoroughly satisfying ending. Unfortunately, I read a few leaks a couple of months ago which were sadly true, and they ruined a few surprises for me, so in future I must remember to avoid reading such things, as it only spoils the enjoyment, so that's why they are called spoilers. This movie does take a few liberties with certain characters, and fans of one in particular may be annoyed with how they are handled. Story-wise, it's nothing new either, and is more of the same with the gang running away and hiding from the Terminator, but it's a formula that works, and the audience I watched it with were cheering out loud at several points. But what of the most important aspect of this movie? The music. Well, Junkie XL is on scoring duties, and thankfully he finally brings the theme tune back, which is used a few times, but it's at its best during the end credits. It's not as scary and sad-sounding as Brad Fiedel's version, but it's the best we've had since 1991. Director Tim Miller showed up at our screening and did a brief Q&A, which was awesome and a nice surprise. It sounded like he had a ball making this movie and got us all pumped up to see Linda and Arnie on the big screen again. The movie was in IMAX, and that's how to see an action movie of this scale, as the visuals and sound quality were at their best. Overall, Terminator Dark Fate is the best sequel of the series since Terminator 2, and is a welcome addition to a franchise which has struggled since 1991. Sarah Connor is back, and better than ever, and even despite the film's flaws, it's still action-packed and a movie I will happily return to again over the years. The Terminator and John Connor, and received backlash for its focus on the female cast members, 156mm 157, 1558, a teaser trailer for the film, was released on May 23, 2019, 159, that features a cover version of Buck Hunter. Performed by John Mark McMillan, 160D 161, the film's theatrical and international trailers were released on August 29, 2019, 1602 163. The trailer's release date marked the anniversary of the original Judgment Day date given in the second film 164. Initially, the marketing campaign highlighted the return of Cameron and Hamilton in the final months. The campaign focused more on the film's action and special effects. Promotional partners included Adobe Inc. and Ruffles. 165 in September 2019, Adobe and Paramount Pictures launched a contest for people to create their own remix version of the trailer using Adobe software and assets from the film 166. In early October 2019, brief footage of the film was shown during a Max screenings of Joker Miller, and the cast went on a global press tour to promote the film. And Hamilton attended a premiere event in Seoul on October 21st, 2019. In the film, Schwarzenegger's character has a van which advertises Carl Draper's 888-512. 1984 on the side of it. The number was an actual phone number, which when dialed, plays a recording of Schwarzen as Carl. The number references May 12, 1984, the date that Kyle Reese time travels to in the first film, 167-168 theatrical. Terminator Dark Fate was released in the UK on October 23, 2019, 1:69, and was released on November 1, 2019 by Paramount Pictures in North America, and 2019 Alamo Drafthouse Cinema hosted surprise screenings of the film in 15 theaters disguised as screenings of Terminator 2, Judgment Day 172. The film's premiere event in the U.S. was to be held on October 28, 2019 at TCL Chinese Mate Theater in Hollywood, Los Angeles, but it was canceled because of nearby wildfires. Home media Terminator Dark Fate was released digitally on January 14, 2020, before its home video releases. On 4K Ultra HD Blu-ray and DVD on January 28th, 175 several deleted scenes were included with the home video release, including one in which Sarah learns that Carl has informed Alicia of his past and his true nature as a killing machine. 176 in another scene, Sarah hijacks a man's vehicle on the highway after Grace and Danny steal hers. 177, another scene depicts the Char characters being attacked by guards as they journey towards the border. 781. Deleted scene depicts Grace volunteering herself to an older Danny to send her to the past. 69. And 179 box office. Terminator Dark Fate gross $162.3 million in the United States and Canada and $198.9 million in other territories for a worldwide total of $261,180,180, with a production budget between $11,151.96 million and an additional $181 million spent on marketing and distribution. Early estimates stated the film needed to earn over $450 million worldwide to break even. 550 to 1881. The film ended up losing Paramount, Sky, and other studios to our $122,600,182. It was labeled a box office bomb after its dismal opening weekend, 18/3/1884, and it finished as the second biggest bomb of 2019, 182, as a result of the losses. Sources close to Skydance said shortly after the release that there were no plans to continue the franchise. 18/185 in the United States. And Canada Dark Fate was released at the same time as Harriet Arctic Dogs and Motherless Brooklyn, and was initially projected to gross $447 million from 486 theaters in its opening weekend. 186. The film made $235 million from Thursday night previews, on a par with the $123 million that Genesis made from its Tuesday night previews in 2015, but after making just $126 million on its first day, weekend estimates were lowered to $127 million. It went on to debut to $129 million. Although it finished first at the box office, it was the lowest opening in the series since the original film. When accounting for inflation, which was blamed on the lukewarm critical reception as well as the audience's disinterest in another Terminator film, 50. The film made $128 million in its second weekend, dropping 63% and finishing fifth, and then $143 million in its third weekend, falling to 11th, 187. 188 in Germany. The film started out with 2,500 viewers, placing it third on that. Weeks charts 189 in the weekend following its international debut. The film grossed $128 million from countries. In Europe and Asia, considered a low start, P9191, the film was projected to gross $1,225 million globally during the first weekend of November 29 1. Instead, it only made 110.19 mil, 18% below projections, including 710 to 29 million. Overseas, as it did in the U.S., the film underperformed in China, where it opened, to just $282 million, far below the $450 million estimates. 50192 critical response on the review aggregator website Rotten Tomatoes, 70%. Of 351 critics' reviews are positive, with an average rating of 6210. The website's consensus reads, Terminator Dark Fate represents a significant upgrade over its immediate predecessors, even if it lacks the thrilling firepower of the franchise's best installments. 193 Metacritic, which uses a weighted average, assigned or average reviews. 194 audiences pulled by CinemaScore gave the film an average grade of B+ on an A+ to F scale, the same score as its three immediate predecessors, while those at Postra gave it an overall positive score of 78%, with Met 51% saying they would definitely recommend it. 50. The Hollywood Reporter wrote that critics overall seemed cautiously excited about Dark Fate, although there's a certain awkwardness about seeing repeated recommendation that it is easily the third best movie in the series. 195 William Bayan of FERP wrote that whether Terminator Dark Fate is the last chapter in this story or the first in an all-new franchise is for now irrelevant. The film works either way, bringing the tale of the first two films to a satisfying conclusion while reintroducing the classic storyline in exciting new ways to an excited new audience. It's a breathtaking blockbuster and a welcome return to form. 196 Varieties, Owen Glaberman called the film the first vital Terminator sequel since Terminator 2, and wrote that Terminator Dark Fate is a movie designed to impress you with its scale and visual effects, but it's also a film that returns in good and gratifying ways to the smartly packaged, low-down genre thriller classicism that gave the original Terminator its kick. 52 Joe Morstan of the Wall Street Journal gave the film a negative review, describing it as cobbled together by dunces in a last-ditch effort to wring revenue from a moribund concept. The plot makes no sense. Time travel as multiverse data. Worse still, it renders meaningless the struggles that gave the first two films of the franchise an epic dimension. 197 Jeffrey M. Anderson of Common Sense Media gave the movie 2 out of 5 stars. This sixth Terminator movie erases the events of the previous 3 dud sequels, but winds up feeling half-erased itself. It's like a dull, pale, irrelevant carbon copy of a once glorious hit. 198 Christy L.M. of Rogert Calm gave Dark Fate 2 out of 4 stars, arguing that it suffered from empty fan service and that Hamilton deserves better, as does her supporting female cast. 199 David Icke of Indu praised Hamilton's performance and the movie's digital recreations of her furlongs and Schwarzenegger's younger likenesses, but concluded that this painfully generic action movie proves that the Terminator franchise is obsolete. 200 Tasha Robinson of The Verge are packed with CGI blurs and muddy action and are hard to follow in even the most basic who's where and are they dead kind of way. And when Dark Fate does deign to explain what's going on, it delivers its exposition in a self-important, hushed, clumsy way, as if audiences should be astonished by the most basic plot revelations. Peter Bradshaw of The Guardian awarded it 2 stars out of 5, stating the Terminator franchise has come thinking robotically into view, once again with its 6th film. It absolutely will not stop not merely repeating itself, but somehow repeating the repetitions. While he wrote that it was good to see Hamilton getting a robust role, he added that sadly she has to concede badass superiority to Davis. He concluded by writing this 6th Terminator surely has to be the last, yet the very nature of the Terminator story means that going round and round in existential circles comes with the territory. 202 Richard Rohr of the Chicago Sun-Times awarded the film 2 stars out of 4, calling it a boring retread and so derivative of Judgment. Day, although he welcomed the return of Linda Hamilton, praised an impressively effective Mackenzie Davis and the winning screen presence of Natalia Reyes 203. Angie Hahn of Mashable found the film underwhelming and its title to be quite apt. Dark Fate is too thinly sketched to anything but page. It feels like a Terminator movie, spit out by a machine designed to make Terminator movies. A dark fate for the franchise, indeed, regarding the film's mixed reception. Tim Miller believed that some audiences were predisposed to dislike the film after being disappointed by the last 3 films, adding that some audiences hate it because it's the 6th movie and Hollywood should be making original movies and not repeating franchises 37. Miller later gave a more blunt assessment in 2022. Terminator is an interesting movie to explore, but maybe we've explored it enough. I went in with the rock-hard nerd belief that if I made a good movie that I wanted to see it, would do well, and I was wrong. It was one of those effing eureka moments in a bad way because the movie tanked. James Cameron reflected on Dark Fate in 2022. I'm actually reasonably happy with the film. I think the problem, and I'm going to wear this one, is that I refuse to do it without Arnold, and then Tim wanted Linda. I think what happened is I think the movie could have survived having Linda in it. I think it could have survived having Arnold in it. But when you put Linda and Arnold in it, and then, she's 60-some, he's 70-something, all of a sudden it wasn't your Terminator movie. It wasn't even your dad's Terminator movie. It was your granddad's Terminator movie. And we didn't see that it was just our own myopia. We kind of got a little high on our own supply. And I think that's the lesson there. 206 Schwarzenegger also gave a blunt assessment in a 2023 interview about the franchise. The first 3 movies were great. Number 4, Salvation, I was not in because I was governor. Then 5, Genesis, and 6, Dark Fate didn't close the deal as far as I'm concerned. We knew that ahead of time because they were just not well written. Terminator Dark Fate movie review in a franchise that's all about traveling to the past and tinkering with the timeline to prevent future tragedies from occurring. It makes perfect sense that the latest Terminator movie would engage in some revisionist history of its own. Terminator Dark Fate exists in a world, and in a world, to borrow from the late great trailer narrator Don LaFontaine, where the previous 3 films in the series never even existed. Director Tim Miller, working from a script by David S. Goyer and Justin Rhodes and Billy Ray, picks up where the high-tech game-changer Terminator 2 Judgment Day left. Off in 1991, it's as if we never had to slog through Terminator 3 Rise of the Fury. Machines 2003, Terminator Salvation 2009, and Terminator Genesis 2015. If only we could get that time back, too. This is an inspired idea, one born of ingenuity as well as pure survival instincts. This was an action franchise of mythological proportions that was steadily dying. It's enough to make you wish the filmmakers had explored this approach for more than relentless action and empty fan service. Dark Fate recycles images, visual effects, and even dialogue from the previous movies, including lines that have been uttered so many times in so many other pop culture contexts that they now elicit groans within the confines of an actual Terminator setting. Sure, it's great to see Linda Hamilton back swaggering and kicking ass in the defining role of her career as Sarah Connor. But now she's the one who gets to say, "I'll be back." It's hilarious, as well as some other painfully clunky lines. Like, "I hunt Terminators and I drink till I black out." Hamilton deserves better. So do the other strong women who make up the film's trio of warriors fighting to protect each other and all of humanity from technological destruction, again this time in a present day where the machines haven't taken over yet. A woman drops from the sky in a glowing blue orb naked, but otherwise ready for her mission. Her name is Grace, a formidable Mackenzie Davis. She's an augmented human soldier from the future. And she's arrived in Mexico City to keep a seemingly ordinary young woman from being killed, Danny R. Natalia Reyes is an upbeat auto factory worker whose mundane life gets turned upside down, sometimes literally, when an unstoppable machine of death comes after her. He is the Rev and a suitably stoic Gabriel Luna, the latest Terminator model with all the ferocious fighting skills and morphing abilities of the T-1000. And then some. He can take a shotgun blast to the head and heal to perfection within seconds. He car turn his arms into spears, sledgehammers, guns, whatever weapons he needs, with a mere flick of the wrist he can get. Obliterated in a blast, his limbs scattered hither and yon, only to have them melt into gooey black puddles that scurry across the floor to recreate his shape once more. He's like the Blob only. Super evil, he even has a skeleton that separates from his exterior so he can fly a helicopter in the sky and battle puny humans on the ground simultaneously. Cool ideas all, and exciting improvements on the digital wizardry that dazzled us nearly 3 decades ago. The visual effects are considered consistently the strongest part of Dark Fate, but they're in the service of a blockbuster that is relentless in its one-note intensity. Miller, who achieved a far more pleasing balance of action and comedy with the first Deadpool movie, functions here at a single frenetic speed for 2 solid hours, and it is exhausting. The first big fight scene between Grace and the Rev N is full of inventive acrobatic choreography, and Miller and Oscar-nominated editor Julian Clark were wise to let big sections of choreography play out, but eventually the fact that the Rev 9 just keeps coming over and over again without the slightest trace of weakness or vulnerability grows repetitive and tedious, even when Sarah Connor shows up out of nowhere in the midst of a lengthy, heart-pounding car chase to blow stuff up and then walk away without looking at it. She heightens the sense of anxiety. Despite the arsenal in her truck and her detached been-there-done-that demeanor, Hamilton looks fierce as ever, but she's stuck explaining things to her fellow female cohorts through an expository dialogue that's both herring and blaz. Sarah was Danny once. She understands the young woman's confusion over her sudden sense of importance, as well as the paranoia that fuels the group's every move. Then just when it seems so refreshing to have not one but a group of strong women at the center of an extreme and extremely violent action picture, part of a behemoth franchise, about preventing the apocalypse. Along comes Arnold Schwarzenegger to save the day, because you couldn't reboot the franchise without the original Terminator. Theoretically, he said he'd be back after all, but while it's hugely amusing to discover where he's been and what he's been doing all this time, his banter with Sarah Connor is less than snappy, and it is sort of depressing in the end to find the film putting these badass ladies in the position of needing rescue from a man, even if he is an android, when they were doing just fine on their own. Thank you very much. This film, directed by Tim Miller, screenplay by David S. Goyer, Justin Rod's Billy Ray, story by James Cameron, Charles H. Eglee, Josh Friedman, David S. Goyer, Justin Rod's, produced by James Cameron, David Ellison, starring Linda Hamilton Arnold, Schwarzenegger, Mackenzie Davis, Natalia Reyes, Gabriel Luna, Diego Bonta. Cinematography, Ken Sang, edited by Julian Clark, music by Tom Hulkenberg production. Companies, Paramount Pictures, 20th Century Fox, Skydance Media, Tencent Pictures, Lightstorm Entertainment, TSG Entertainment, distributed by Paramount. Pictures 20th Century Fox, release dates, October 23, 2019, Europe, November 1, 2019. United States, running time, 128 minutes, country United States, languages English, Spanish budget, $151.96 million, box office, $26.11 million. So guys, this is the review of Terminator Dark Fate movie and some information about it. How do you like our today's video? Please let us know by commenting, and if you like this video, please like,